The Sixth Doctor really got the short end of the stick when it comes to TV stories. His audios are among the best, but many of his TV episodes are ranked among the worst. However, there are some gems in the Sixth Doctor's brief TV tenure, such as Attack of the Cybermen and Vengeance on Varos. But for me, the best Sixth Doctor episode is Revelation of the Daleks. And it's strange, because despite the fact that I'm a huge Dalek fan, the Daleks aren't actually the thing that I like most about this episode. In fact, the Daleks themselves barely feature. The Necros Daleks are a background presence, if anything, and play second fiddle to Davros, only becoming a prominent presence in the story when he commands it to be so. And the Grey Daleks don't show up until right at the end. This episode is about Davros, the DJ, the Doctor and Perry, Joe Bell and Tassan Baker, Orsini and Bostock, Kara and Vogel, Tarkus and Lilt, Natasha and Grigory. Blimey, that's a lot of characters. But this episode weaves their stories together into a fascinating tapestry of intrigue and horror, as Davros' sinister scheme in the Tranquil Repose facility brings violence and death that shakes the very foundations of Necros. Because there are so many characters in this episode, the Doctor and Perry don't really have much to do for the first act or so. The majority of the opening of this episode is spent establishing the characters, setting and major plot elements. If this had been mishandled, it could have made Revelation of the Daleks a very dull story, but thankfully, this episode was written by the legendary Eric Saward, whose razor-sharp wit and twisted sense of humour populate Revelation of the Daleks with a varied cast of wonderful characters. This is very much a story of double acts, as almost every character is paired with another. There isn't a moment wasted in this story, as characters play off each other really well in pairs or pairs of pairs, aided by the fast-paced and witty dialogue. Standouts of this story include Orsini and Bostock, who are attempting to assassinate Davros, Natasha and Grigory, who are trying to unravel the dark secrets of the Tranquil Repose facility, and Kara and Vogel, who want to eliminate Davros and manipulate the situation on Necros to their own ends. As previously mentioned, the Daleks in this story don't make quite as much of an impression as they do in some of the best Dalek stories of Classic Who, like Power of the Daleks, Genesis of the Daleks, or Remembrance of the Daleks. But there are still some really great Dalek moments here. We see the first on-screen battle of the Imperial Renegade Dalek Civil War. We see Daleks stalking through the corridors and exterminating people, and we also see a guy fight off a squad of Daleks using a highly directional, ultrasonic beam of focused rock and roll. This episode is wacky, but once you get what it's going for, it's a really fun ride. Revelation of the Daleks is an example of a Dalek story in which both the Doctor and the Daleks take somewhat of a back seat to the narrative, and the focus is instead on the side characters. This would have been a truly terrible idea if this episode was written by someone like Terry Nation, who seemed to delight in writing the same set of stock characters over and over again for his Dalek stories, but thankfully Eric Saward has a much better grasp of how to write interesting, believable, and emotive characters. You really feel for the likes of Orsini and Natasha, and even the more reprehensible characters like Joe Bell and Tassan Baker are really fun to be around. Despite his limited screen time in this episode, the Doctor gets some great scenes with both the Daleks and Davros. The conversation between the Doctor and Davros in this episode is one of the best Davros scenes in all of Classic Who, and the Sixth Doctor goes full Third Doctor and takes on a Dalek with a machine gun, blinding it so Perry can take it out with a well-placed explosive. Whilst the Doctor and Perry don't really do much for the first part of the episode, they become a key component of the second part, interacting with the main cast of characters who we, the audience, have already met, and influencing events to ensure that the plans of both Davros and the Daleks fail. The interactions between the Doctor and Orsini in particular emphasise this key aspect of Revelation of the Daleks. The Doctor is but one of the many important players in this story, and while that is a stark deviation from the standard format of an episode of Doctor Who, it is not necessarily an unwelcome one. Revelation of the Daleks is perhaps an acquired taste of sorts, going into this episode expecting an action-packed Dalek romp like Resurrection of the Daleks or Remembrance of the Daleks may leave the viewer disappointed. But Revelation of the Daleks is the darker, more unorthodox middle act of the three-part 80s Dalek trilogy that is not afraid to take risks. The Daleks and the Doctor are sidelined for an expansive tale of intergalactic intrigue, with Davros at the centre, and while there are examples of great Dalek scenes in this episode, they are by no means the core narrative focus. So the question remains, is Revelation of the Daleks a good episode? While it may not be the best Dalek story, as the Daleks themselves are not a priority in the story and the focus is more on Davros and the supporting cast, it is without a doubt one of the most enjoyable episodes of the Sixth Doctor's tenure, and it is among the best Classic Who stories for its wit alone. Nonetheless, the jury is still out on whether Revelation of the Daleks utilise the Daleks effectively, but a Dalek story doesn't necessarily have to prioritise the Daleks, provided it treats them with respect. And from that point of view, Revelation of the Daleks is a key Dalek episode. episode. We see the iconic Necros Dalek design, the precursor to the Imperial Daleks. We see an early skirmish of the Dalek Civil War, and witness a key turning point in the Daleks' story in Classic Who, which culminates in the grand finale of Remembrance of the Daleks. So, while it is undoubtedly a very unusual episode, Revelation of the Daleks is nonetheless a classic Dalek story, a must-watch for Dalek fans and one of the standout stories of the Sixth Doctor's era. What do you think? Have you seen Revelation of the Daleks? Let me know what you think of this episode in the comments below.